The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Sharam Fouladgar-Mercer. Sharam is the co-founder and CEO at Signos. Sharam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. So Sharam, let's start with yourself. Please give us a bit of background of your journey in tech, from where you got started and what's led you to where you are today.
Happy to. So I was a computer science undergrad a long time ago in a galaxy far away. After that, I went to work at a technology startup called Appian. At the time, it was a startup. They recently IPO'd, of course, but worked on a few different things. One was in charge of the complaints tracking system for the Department of Homeland Security. So we essentially built that system from scratch at the time, and ultimately went and got an MBA. And I was a VC at Sierra Ventures after that, and an entrepreneur in residence at Shasta Ventures afterward, and ended up starting a VC-backed business called Onclusive. It's an AI software business to measure the impact of PR using AI. We process through about 10 terabytes of data a day. That company now has about 9,000 or so customers around the world and 1,100 employees, and ultimately started Signos. And a little bit of the personal background, because I was overweight or / obese growing up as a kid.
Thank you for sharing that, and we'll certainly circle back around to some of the early work that you did and that got you exposure to AI from your time at Onclusive, because that's very early stages of AI. But you touched on it there. You're now the co-founder and CEO of Signos, and you've given a little bit of a hint as to what the company does. So please tell us all about Signos, who you are as a business, what the mission of the organization is, and then we can talk about the technology that's driving you guys behind the scenes.
Sounds great. So Signos essentially will translate your metabolic signals into timely, let's call them recommendations for eating, exercise, and better health. And so when someone joins, they have the ability to log what they eat, and our platform can learn based on that how your glucose responds. And so once our system is calibrated, we actually use that data to provide very personalized suggestions, including around exercise and nutrition, in order to keep your glucose levels in range. And really, one of the things that we really focus on is the best quote unquote diets are the ones that help you find a healthy, stable weight. And really, the most effective weight loss apps are the ones that hold you accountable and encourage behavior change. And so Signos really focuses on how do we tackle the obesity epidemic, where 75% of Americans are overweight or obese. And the challenge is that number has continued to go up over time. But regardless, even if you're not in that group, it's how do we optimize your health and wellness? And really, glucose is the key link for driving that experience. It provides the real-time feedback and building accountability, and in a sustainable way that doesn't require this massive lifestyle change that I think every one of us have gone through when going through a weight loss journey. And that's really where we're trying to focus, which is spiking your glucose is normal. Our systems have a great way to handle that. But in America, constantly elevated blood glucose is not healthy. And so how do we help individuals and prevent them from ultimately becoming pre-diabetic or diabetic, or causing long-term chronic care conditions from high cholesterol to diabetes and cardiovascular disease on down? And that's really what our mission is. And in my personal journey, as I mentioned, I was a obese / overweight kid growing up. And ultimately, my parents threw me in a bunch of sports, got good at hockey, went to college to play. But even 3 or 4 years ago, I was overweight again. So like many Americans, have been up and down in this weight loss journey, and really was looking for a different way of approaching this. And this ended up being that missing link that we started to really focus our efforts on beyond just the calorie, which is something that all of us have used historically in the past.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing the background, and it's great to hear that the idea behind Signos and its mission was something that's close to you personally, because it always helped tell the story, but also have a purpose in what you're doing. So given your background, you've had a lot of oversight of various technology startups. You've worked in AI yourself previously. Once you came up with the idea of the problem that you're trying to tackle, what were the early steps that you took to utilize technology in combination with work with the science aspect to try and form a go-to-market product?
I think it's how do we automate things that haven't been automated that actually will move the needle for individual members. And simple examples are, right now you go and you can have an individual give you advice, and that advice could be around nutrition or it could be around exercise. And that advice will vary from individual to individual, depending on their knowledge base, their comfort level, their experience, and a host of other things. And so our focus was, what if you had access to unlimited resources? What would you want? Who would you want following you around? What would you want to measure? What would you want to accomplish if the sky was the limit? And how do we leverage technology to help with those pieces? Because at the end of the day, we cannot help Americans with this problem if the costs are exorbitant. And so we need to leverage technology to have a cost efficient way that's also scalable, so we can go after and help as many Americans as possible.
So can you walk us through what it's like for a user of the product right now, from when they first get introduced to Signos, whether it's recommended by their doctor or somebody already using it? What does the day-to-day look like? And then we can jump into the role that AI and data science is playing behind the scenes.
Sure. Yes. When an individual starts with Signos, once they receive the package in the mail, essentially what they end up with is a onboarding process. They walk through, they put the CGM on, they have the app ready to go, and they're essentially calibrating. And so they're calibrating both their own understanding of how and what glucose really is, because this is the first time most folks have ever experienced or measured this before. And so it's both seeing in front of your eyes, oh, I just ate this thing I'm used to eating, this, whether it's a high carb meal, low carb meal, whatever it may be, a dinner out, the thing that I'm used to eating that I thought was either pretty healthy or I thought was actually fairly negative for my body. Does it have that actual response? And how does that change? And there are so many different ways that can change. It can change, for example, if you slept 9 hours last night versus you slept for 1 hour. It could change if you did exercise this morning versus if you haven't exercised in 6 months. So even what's most fascinating about this is, even if you have an understanding of what you think will happen, there are so many variables at play that we can now start to look at. How do we tune and tailor your individual experience and your metabolism to optimize for the types of foods both that you like, but also find the right foods that you want? And so the goal here is not how do we put everyone on a keto diet, but it's how do we allow you to have carbs and find the right carbs that fit your metabolism in your body? How do we allow you to eat some of the foods that you still like? The goal is not how do we eliminate everything from your diet that you've historically been eating, throw everything away and fill up the fridge with completely different things, because that's what usually entails the giant lifestyle change that causes people to ultimately, after a certain period of time, come back and revert to what they had been doing in the past. So our focus is really, how do we optimize this from the moment that they start after they're up and going? It's how do we continue to encourage that engagement with the system, and then allow them to try a number of different things so they can start to experiment. And more importantly, even if they don't want to go through that experimentation, or they do, let the system figure out what it needs to understand about their body and make those recommendations.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
So focusing now on the AI behind all of this and what the current team looks like, can you give us some insight into the various aspects of AI at play here, the current makeup of the team, and what sort of backgrounds of people you brought together to make all this possible?
Yeah, so our head of machine learning, Dimitri, has a phenomenal background. He has really focused on building the core parts of the AI and scaling the infrastructure as we started to do this. And so there are a number of different pieces that we're leveraging in our system. And it's everything from how do we make sure that we have sufficient training data for our system and for that type of individual that we're seeing. How do we ensure that at the end of the day, those recommendations we're making are both timely and useful and individuals can do them? A host of things that tie into that. And the challenge is that we're leveraging AI and using it in a way that hadn't really been done before, because no one's affixed glucose or any of this stuff from a data standpoint to this. And the real-time aspect of the nature, there's everything from time series data in here to just massive number of data points for each individual. It's being able to really do this at scale that makes this both a fun and extremely challenging job for Dimitri and the engineering team, but also being able to leverage that data and showcase it in a way that hasn't existed is what I think causes this to be exciting for folks.
Yeah, I would agree. It's very exciting, just given the complexity of the problem, but also the impact that it can have for the users. Is there any recent examples or stories that you could share with the audience that just demonstrate just how impactful this can be? Something that you're particularly excited about, or a recent story you heard from a customer and how it was able to change things for them?
So, we have a wide variety of customers leveraging the platform. And whenever you start a company, there's the inherent either assumption or bias that it will be better for one group than another. So maybe it's better for men than women or vice versa, or it's better for the folks in their 20s and 30s than it is for folks in their 50s and 60s. It's better. There's so many different angles but the challenge here in our industry is that obesity is not something that affects one gender more than another versus a number of these different statistics. Obviously, as age increases, because obesity is a long-term challenge, that number goes up. But with something like this and leveraging technology, it's been fascinating for us because yesterday we actually received a very wonderful testimonial from someone that is 70 years old that's been using this and has tried a number of different things, and it was doing exercise already on their own and they couldn't lose the weight. And this was the first time they had gotten to their target weight in the last 30 years. And they were talking about how motivating it was and liberating that they were able to do this. And weight loss, I'll be the first to say, having been on this path a number of different times myself, and even using Signos to do it, weight loss is tough. It's challenging. It's messy. You feel like you're not in control. And being able to give people the understanding that here are the steps you need to take. And it's not just the goal is to lose 100 pounds or a goal is to lose 5 pounds. These are micro steps we can give you in order to hit your target. I think that's what really sets this apart. And the thing that was fascinating to me is you have folks that are using this in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s and onward. And the fact that so many folks across the spectrum were able to leverage something like this just showcases how there's a pain point here and everyone wants to get healthier and everyone wants a better way than what exists right now.
Absolutely. And with the continued growth of the company, the increasing use of the technology and the platform, you guys as a business are going to continue to grow. So focusing specifically on the data team behind all of this, when you look ahead over the next year to 2 years, where are you going to need to hire? What opportunities are there going to be for people who are interested in this tech but working in and around data? What opportunities will there be for those guys to potentially come and join Signos?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. So we're actively hiring right now. If folks go to signos.com/career, they'll see a number of the different roles. We have about 15 open roles just to begin with, but we're in the midst in particular of hiring a lead ML engineer, lead machine learning engineer. Focus really, you have experience in time series, structured data, NLP, computer vision, any of those things are wonderful. Use TensorFlow, PyTorch, really experienced and proficiency in data structures and algorithms. We're a Python shop, so if that's something that's in your background, that's wonderful. But that's something that we are hiring for aggressively right now, in addition to looking for product analyst / data science analyst on that side as well. And then continuing to scale up. We have so many different challenges, both on the engineering side, whether we're hiring senior backend engineers, full stack folk. Again, we're a Python shop there, but also on the ML side. So I think as we look forward towards the business, we're in one of those situations where we're just going to continue to keep hiring. So If we were to find 1, 2, 3 machine learning engineers that fit the criteria, we would hire them all. I think the demand is there for tackling these problems, and we want to make sure that we have the right folks and the smartest people that are most importantly passionate personally about solving these types of challenges and want to join a company in the early stage that can really make a difference.
I love that. Final question from me then. When you look ahead at the sort of runway for Signos, given what you've been able to accomplish already, the great feedback you're getting and the explosion in demand for health technology, what are you most excited about for Signos and the future of the business over the next few years?
Yeah, so I think that the future here, really the goal here is working towards a healthier future for everyone, enabling insight into your personal metabolic data that hasn't been accessible before, tracking glucose, providing the ability for people to do that. And I really think as we start to unlock a variety of different benefits here, it's not just around weight loss. It's about optimizing health and wellness. It's about helping, as a result of that, optimizing your nutrition and exercise and sleep and hydration. And the list goes on. There are so many things that all working together ultimately affect how your body will process and convert the food that you ate into glucose, or the exercise, or how your body responds to exercise, and some of which in conjunction with each other, folks are really just starting to understand now, and many of which haven't even been measurable before. So being able to give someone the end result here about how your body responds in real time and seeing that with a number in front of your eye ends up being one of the key aspects where we can now take that and not just use it for weight loss, but use it for a number of different avenues. And that's what gets us, I think, the most excited.
Sharam, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. Really appreciate you sharing your own backstory, the origins behind Signos. It sounds like a fascinating product, and clearly it's working given the growth of the business and the impact from those stories that you shared with a great use of AI. It's AI for good, and you're tackling one of the most important problems that we face today in society. So we wish you, the team, and everyone at Signos the best of luck in the years ahead.
Thank you very much for having us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.